My name is Don Trinks. I am the mayor of the town of Windsor, and it is an immeasurable honor to host the governor and the lieutenant governor to Windsor today. I know the governor and lieutenant governor is sincere when they say, wow, what a beautiful town you have, and we do, and that is a direct result of a great community, great people, great volunteers. I see members of my council out there, our state delegation. So rather than listen to me, because you can do that every Monday and every first and third Monday, town council, which is available streaming, by the way, I would like to take the opportunity to introduce somebody who has always been a friend of the town of Windsor, our Lieutenant Governor, Susan Bicewicz.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. It is great to be here in beautiful, historic Windsor, and we've come here today to talk about what is happening in 21 days, and that is in 21 days on August 11th, we are having presidential and other legislative primaries. And so we also, in 104 days, have a November election for president, legislative, and other offices. And we're here to talk about the August 11th primary to encourage people to take the opportunity, if they are registered as a Democrat or Republican, to vote in the Democratic and Republican presidential primaries, and also the various primaries that I'll talk about in a minute that are happening. Now, the governor has issued an executive order based on the premise that nobody should have to choose between their health and the right to vote. And that is how we are all in Connecticut able to vote by absentee ballot. So the Secretary of the State has mailed 1.25 million ballots to every registered Democrat and every registered Republican across the state. She has sent the application. So if you got one of those in the mail, please do fill it out and mail it back as soon as possible, because that's only step one of the process. Step two of the process is your town clerk will then mail you the actual ballot, which you have to vote and send in. And the nice thing about the Secretary of the State's absentee ballot application is that it includes a prepaid posted envelope, so all you have to do is fill the application out and mail it back, or put it in one of those lovely metal bins with the state of Connecticut seal on it. Those are in every town, especially for those absentee ballot applications and ballots. Now, I do want to also say that we are gathered here today because we are here to support the election legislation that our General Assembly will be voting on either today in the House or next week in the state Senate, that brings to us in November the very same type of absentee ballot voting ability for the November general election. And the legislature is considering that because we are likely to see a spike in COVID-19 in the fall, and we want to make sure that everybody takes the opportunity to get an absentee ballot, not jeopardize their health, and exercise their civil rights. So if you did not get an absentee ballot application in the mail, there is still time. You can call your town clerk's office, request an application, either in person or over the phone, and return that. Also, if you're saying, I'm an unaffiliated voter and I would like to vote in one of the primaries, now's your opportunity. You have until noon the day before, noon until August 10th, to switch from being unaffiliated to Republican or Democrat, whichever is your pleasure. So make sure that you contact your local registrars to make that happen. You can make that choice online, or you can fill out a card and bring it or send it in to your town hall. There are a number of primaries happening on the Democratic side. There's a state Senate primary. There is a Registrar of Voters primary in Stratford. There are 8 state representative primaries, and maybe some of our special guests have a bit to say about that. There's 1 probate judge primary, and on the Republican side, there are 2 congressional primaries in District 1 and 2, and also there is 1 state Senate primary, and there are 2 state representative primaries. So please do check the Secretary of the State's website if you have any doubt about what primaries are occurring in your district, but across the state, there are presidential primaries for the Democrats and for the Republicans. So with that, I want to introduce the Dean of the Windsor Legislative Delegation, and the person with the best hat in the room, Senator Doug McCrory.
Funny, I've never been called a dean. The only time I saw a dean was out in trouble. But anyway, first of all, you know, the hallmark of any democracy is the opportunity for citizens to have the opportunity to vote. And I'm excited that we'll be going in pretty soon to continue what our governor did and his executive order to allow individuals to have the opportunity to cast their ballot in an absentee form. We have to remember now, Susan Beiswitz gave us a detailed analysis, but remember, you have to return the ballot, and you have to do it the old-fashioned way, snail mail. So individuals, you have to resort back to what we originally used to do. Put that ballot in the mailbox and make sure it's secure. It's very important for our democracy, and I'm excited, again, to go in and cast a ballot next week to make sure our democracy continues the way it is. Although we're in unusual times, this is the opportunity for everyone to continue to participate. So thank you, and looking forward to making this legislation move forward next week.
Senator, thank you so much. I'd now like to introduce State Representative Brandon McGee, who leads the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus, for a few words.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Susan Beiswitz, and to all of you that are here, thank you as well. A lot has already been said with respect to the importance of absentee ballots. The House will be going into session this Thursday at 11 to vote on that very important measure. But I would say, you know, one of the more important reasons as to why everyone should have access, without reason, access to absentee voting is we talked a lot about communities, or rather hard to count communities in neighborhoods where they unfortunately don't have the transportation or might have a medical condition or etc. This would allow for everyone to be a part of that process. And I would be remiss, COVID had a direct impact and still continues to have an impact on those hard to count communities throughout the state of Connecticut. So I'm honored to be here with our Lieutenant Governor, our state delegation, our governor, to really, really highlight the importance of absentee voting. Again, when you mail your application and you receive your ballot, make sure you vote and place it back in the mailbox. Again, thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative McGee. I'd now like to introduce State Representative Bobby Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Bobby Gibson. I represent Bloomfield in Windsor. But speaking today, I'm speaking on behalf of the entire state. It's a pleasure to be here because as I'm going around speaking to constituents, there are so many that are excited about the opportunity to vote. Yesterday, I met a young man who just turned 18 and he had not registered yet. So I explained to him how to fill out an application card or go online to vote. As I speak to constituents, I have some who are senior citizens and they want to be able to vote and they want to use absentee ballots. So I would encourage everyone here to get out the word, to make sure you send in that absentee ballot. I would encourage everyone to get behind us as we go back into session and we fight for greater access to vote. That is one of the fundamental rights and duties and privileges we have is to vote. As I speak to the Bloomfield Town Clerk Marjorie Phillips and actually the Town Clerk here, Annie, there's thousands of people who want to fill out absentee ballots. There's thousands of people who want in November to continue to be able to use the absentee ballot. So on August 11th, make sure you fill out your application so you can get your ballot so you can vote. And please, we need your support and let's make sure that everyone has access to voting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, State Representative Gibson. And I was waiting for either Representative McGee or Gibson say, and make sure you vote Windsor and their district towns, because both of them are in primaries. So I'll just put that out there as a commercial reminder. Now I'd like to introduce State Representative Jane Garibay, and she is a poster child for why people need to have the opportunity to vote by absentee, and I'll let her talk about her experience and why she's supporting this important legislation.
First, I'd like to introduce a couple of people that have attended today. We have Town Councilor Nuchip Black-Burke, Town Councilor Lisa Bress, and Lynn Lockhart, our President of our Board of Education, and our fearless leader, Peter Sousa, our Town Manager, is out there hiding somewheres. This is very important to me that we are able to have mail-in voting. As you know, I did experience COVID. We don't know enough about it. It's like spinning a roulette wheel. You don't know whether you're going to get hard, you're going to get easy, or whatever. And if I thought, only once did I try not to vote, and I was sick, and at like 10 of 8, I had to run out and do it. So if I were sick at the time on November 3rd, and in the primary also, and could not get out there to vote, I would have been devastated. So this allows for all people to vote. It's important, and I will be voting for this legislation on Thursday. And I encourage everyone to put in, because you just don't know what life is going to be like on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So it's now my pleasure to introduce Governor Lamont. I will say that we heard from thousands of people across the state, Democrats, Republicans, unaffiliated voters, so many people from every corner of the state since the onset of COVID that telling us that they would like to vote by absentee ballot because they were concerned about the long lines they were seeing as some of the presidential primaries unfolded. And I want to take this opportunity to applaud our governor for hearing that message and for playing a leadership role, not only in making sure that our residents are amongst the safest in the country, but also protecting our most important civil right. Governor Lamont.
Hey, thank you, Susan. And Jane, you're right. You just don't know what next week is going to bring, not to mention November. And Jane knows better than everybody the risks that are out there. And I got to say, as I do often, thank you, Connecticut. You've taken this very seriously. Connecticut more likely than any state in the country to be wearing the mask. In Connecticut, the lowest infection rate in the country. That's thanks to each and every one of you. And take this seriously. And Don, I got to tell you, I do love coming to Windsor. I love a town green, first of all. I love a town green that's coming to life. You just pointed out the housing right around the corner there. You know, transit-oriented housing, young people able to move in, housing they can afford, brings a city, brings a town right back to life. Don and I were talking about, you know, the Amazon facility, close to 1,000+ jobs, I think, actually, over the next couple of years. This is making a difference. The absentee balloting is really key for a number of reasons. You got to be able to vote, and you got to be able to exercise that privilege, and we got to make it easy for you to vote. In the middle of a pandemic, we've got to make sure you can do it safely. And I've got to tell you that we used to say people are already voting with their feet. Well, they're voting with their absentee ballot applications right now, because Denise Merrill, our Secretary of State, said that we have thousands of applications have already been submitted, Susan. People want to take advantage of this. They want to stay safe. They think it's a good way to go. And the other thing Denise wanted me to say is we're going to need more folks to help out on Election Day, in the primary, and in particular in November. And young people, that's you. Hello. Up there, look at your iPhone over here. We got plenty of folks who are the senator's age and my age. We need more young people. Dean, that's what Dean means. We need more young people to get involved and help make a democracy work. And by the way, it pays. So I would definitely contact Don, talk to your, you know, registrar of voters and find out what that opportunity is. I got to say, just I'm proud to be back here in Windsor, proud to be with each and every one of you. You've got an amazing delegation, always fighting for Windsor every day. I can't walk by in the hallway without them coming up with another idea to make this an even better city. And I'm proud to be with each and every one of you. Thanks.
Any questions?
You addressed some of the concerns that people have as far as ballots going out, the applications. I mean, there are bound to be errors, problems. There are in any election. But you believe or address those concerns that people have that there's going to be fraud and cheating.
Yep. So thank you for that question. So there are so many protections in place to ensure that there is no fraud and that every person's ballot will be counted. And the major protection is this, that first there's an application that the voter fills out, and that goes to the town clerk, who is the chief elections official, and the town clerk will look at each and every one of those, make sure that that person is in fact registered with the party, and that that person is indeed a registered voter in the particular town. And then a ballot will be sent out, assuming that person is checked as being correctly on the voter rolls, and that ballot, once it's received back, will be counted in public. And there is the Independent Voter Research Center at the University of Connecticut that will then check voter results statewide after every election. The Secretary of the State will choose a certain number of precincts randomly, and then the University of Connecticut will make sure that each municipality counted votes accurately by hand counting each of the ballots in public. So there are many checks. And the other thing that I really want to say about voter fraud is because we tend to hear this chorus that we can't expand absentee ballot voting because of fraud. Well, my source of these statistics is the Heritage Foundation. So this is a very conservative think tank. And but as an ardent Democrat, I will quote them, because what they said is, over the past 20 years, from 2000 until now, more than 250 million ballots have been cast by paper in our country. And here's the key: 0.00006, so 4 zeros, 0.00006% of the total number of those votes were called into question. So voter fraud is extremely rare in our country, and we also know that the states that have expanded absentee ballot or mail-in voting have higher rates of participation because it's easier for people with disabilities, elderly people, people who are ill or have transportation issues to vote.
It's hard to say how many people will vote by absentee ballot, but do you think that given the pandemic, we'll see a huge increase and it will take a little bit longer to count those ballots during the primary and the November election?
So I think I've been talking to elections officials, town clerks, and registrars all over the state. They have received, depending on the town, hundreds or thousands of the applications in and are busy sending out the ballots. But I think this is something that is going to keep everyone safe. Election officials, poll workers, people who actually do go to vote in person, because there will be fewer long lines and people at those polling stations.
Senator, lawmakers are pushing for a bill right now to expand absentee ballots for the November election. Does that include the primary as well, or would that only be for the November?
So the executive order covers the primary on the 11th, and the legislation that these folks are going to take up covers to November, because the executive order only covers the primary. So this is going to basically extend the primary process to the general election in November.
Why I'm asking is because the lawsuit's now been filed at Superior Court questioning the governor's authority to expand absentee ballots. So I'm wondering if the legislature passes this, does that make this a moot point because it would cover the primary as well?
So, well, first of all, a court dismissed that lawsuit that you're talking about, because, okay. Look, there are always lawsuits about who has the constitutional authority, but I think it strengthens the argument if the legislature goes ahead and expands it to November, because it shows that as a matter of public policy, the people of the state of Connecticut, through their reps, wanted to do that. So we'll have to see how it goes, but it does appear that there's broad support. So I don't know if any of the legislators want to talk.
Can anyone answer whether in that draft bill there's money to help process? We're told 15 minutes per ballot, and that's just for the primary. So you may not know results for a few days, but there's equipment, it takes funding to get it done faster going forward.
Well, yes, first, there is federal money that has come down to the states in this sort of situation. Also, there's a provision in the bill that allows for registrars to start counting the absentee ballots at the beginning of the day on election day. Usually you have to wait to the end of the election at 8 o'clock, and at least people in the facilities from 8 o'clock, sometimes to 9 to 12 o'clock. That won't happen this time because there's a provision in the bill that says you can actually start counting the ballots as they start coming in at the beginning of the day. So we won't have to sit there and wait 2 or 3 days for the results of the election.
And then beyond the legislation during special session, will there eventually have to be a constitutional question again?
I'm not quite sure about that, but I think what Susan said, by validating the fact that we went in as legislators to put forth this measure, we understand that that is what the community wants, that's what the citizens want, and by us passing this legislation, and it will be done on a bipartisan level, I think that'll eliminate the idea of having that any lawsuits in the future.
But do you have the amount of polling locations be open, or will there be limited locations for people to go to as of absentee ballots?
So the legislation that will be before the legislature right now allows for election day registration and voting at more than one place per town. Right now it's just at one particular place. So I know there are some towns, particularly college towns, that would like to have more than one location open for doing that. And the legislation as it stands now says that as long as somebody's in line to register to vote and to cast their ballot at 8 p.m., they will have their vote counted even if it's cast after 8 o'clock right? So they'll close the polling location at 8, and everybody who's in the building at that point can vote.
A question for the governor. The Connecticut Education Association released its safe learning plan today. It includes weekly testing and guaranteed state funding. Can you tell us your thoughts on that and whether or not you plan to look into any of those recommendations?
I will. Let me just fill in from our former Secretary of State, just two things. One, REO was related to absentee balloting during the primary, specific to COVID, and what the legislature is going to pass is going to allow us to do this in the general election, specific to COVID. And what we can do more broadly from there will be another issue. And in terms of who's going to be doing it, by the way, if you're over 65, if you got a pre-existing condition, vote by mail. Vote by mail. It's much safer. The question is about CEA, the teachers representing the teachers and their request for more testing. Look, I'm willing to listen to anything that makes teachers feel safe and they can get back into the classroom. I will tell you the CDC and all the other healthcare experts that we're listening to have said it's not necessary and a little redundant. But let's sit down and talk to the teachers. I got to give them confidence that we can get them back into the classroom safely. And the kids really need their teachers.
And on a similar note, we've heard from a lot of people who have had a test taken and it's taken about a week or longer to get results back. Do you have any plans to kind of speed up that process?
Yeah, that's two things. One, we're working as much as we can with our local labs, Japson and Semaphore, and there we're getting a quick turnaround, 24 hours or less. For those that have to go out of state, Quest and the such, we've negotiated contracts, so we're near the top of that list. But more specifically, look, 5 days is an eternity in COVID time. You don't know what's happened at that nursing home in the 5 days it's taking you to get that response. So we're doing as much as we can to move all the testing analysis right here in the state of Connecticut, and we're not going to have that wait.
So Governor, just to be 100% clear on this, the legislation before lawmakers right now does not cover the primary, only the November election. Your executive order is not like duplicating.
Yep.
I think that's right.
That's right.
So, I mean, what about the lawsuit that says that you don't have the authority to expand absentee ballots?
Well, again, the Supreme Court just ruled pretty clearly on that. You're right, then they appeal it. People didn't used to like nuisance lawsuits. Now we have a lot of them. But I think, look, if the legislature wants to double down and say for the primary as well as the general election, just to have belts and suspenders, all the better. But we feel very strong, given the Chief Justice's opinion, that what we're doing for the EO, which is coming right up for absentee balloting in the primary, is going to hold. And I want people to know they can take advantage of that.
My understanding from the Supreme Court was that it was just filed in the wrong court and like it was against the wrong person, so that's why they had to refile. But you didn't give an opinion as far as the validity of their argument.
Right, and we'll wait for the court, but I'll just say, as a matter of public policy, the longer it goes to August 11th, thousands of people across the state have already sent in their absentee ballot applications. There is no more right, more precious than somebody's right to vote. And I don't think it matters whether you do it on paper that goes through the mail versus on a piece of paper at a polling location. But, obviously we'll do whatever a court says. But I think we all feel extremely strongly that our courts are going to uphold what the Secretary of the State and the Governor have done.
And then Senator Pisano is in favor of expanding absentee ballots, but he had spoken previously about concerns about just sending out absentee ballots to all registered voters, instead preferring to have voters request an absentee ballot and then go that way. Why was that not the method?
Why not make it easier for people to vote? I don't know why we wouldn't want to do that. I don't understand the purpose of that lawsuit. If they want it, are you telling people who are 75 years old who have a pre-existing condition that's not good enough? You have to go wait in a long line like they had to do in Georgia and Wisconsin? Is that what they want to accomplish? I don't know where they're going on this lawsuit. But more broadly, I think sending out the ballots to everybody was good. By the way, it cleaned out a lot of duplicates in the things, so we're going to have a really good database for the November election.
Governor, could you comment on the 3 Mohegan employees that tested positive for COVID this month, cause of concern?
It's always a cause of concern. That's the first I've heard about it. I will tell you, look, as you maybe you remember, I was, I'll get more interesting in a second.
Finding shade.
I was really concerned having a lot of older people in enclosed space gambling at the casinos when they did. And a little hats off to both of the casinos. They've had a they've been following the protocol strictly. People have been wearing the mask. I'm sorry to hear about the 3 infections that maybe happened in and around the workplace, and I'll have to look into that.
Governor, can you address the, there seems to be some wavering support in the Senate among Democrats for the police immunity, and where do you stand on that and on the bill overall right now?
Dan is asking about the police accountability and transparency bill, which is weaving its way through the House and Senate. Look, it's a really important bill, especially given what this country's gone through over the last month since George Floyd. It accomplishes some amazingly important things, one of which is for the first time we can hold police accountable. And under post and the standards, they can be decertified. And they won't be able to keep their job, and they won't be able to get another job in law enforcement. And I think that plus the Inspector General is some of the things that really give you confidence this is an important bill to get passed. You know, that said, you asked about the qualified immunity. I've heard a lot of pushback on that on both sides of the aisle in the legislature. And anything that jeopardizes that bill, I think, is let's put that on pause. Let's have a task force or something to look into it. Let's get past what we can now.
Can you give us an update on travel restrictions?
The update on travel restrictions is, first of all, the number of people from those highly infected states has dropped by better than half since we announced the quarantine, 10 days ago. That said, we also wanted to make sure people knew how seriously we are taking the quarantine. And that's why we've got an online way that you have to self-certify. You have to say, I've tested negative, or I'm going to quarantine for 14 days. This is where I'm going to quarantine for 14 days. This is how you can reach me so we can check and make sure that you're quarantining for 14 days. And if you refuse to fill out the form, there could be a fine assessed.
And there's been an increase in the number of states as well, is that correct?
It is. It's a fast-moving target, and fortunately, it's not going down. It's going up. It's really all the southern tier, and I do worry because I look at Maryland and Virginia and some other places that we thought were out of the woods, and they have an infection rate that's ticking up a little bit. So I worry.
Mr. Governor, going back to the police accountability bill, lawmakers were led to believe that you cannot support the qualified immunity. Do you support the qualified immunity?
I think the bill is very strong without the qualified immunity. I think the bill, doing what they do, are able to hold police accountable, be able to get a policeman off the beat, out of work, and no longer able to work in police force around the rest of the state. And I think that's what you ought to be doing.
And going back to the CEA, the staff and students they're asking to be tested every week. Is that something that's possible?
Well, we sort of just talked about that for a minute, but look, everything is possible. But the CDC and all the healthcare experts across the country have said that's really not necessary, especially for the kids. Probably not absolutely necessary. By the way, any teacher that wants to get tested, go to a federally qualified health center. You can get tested, symptomatic, asymptomatic, no questions asked, no cost.
And they're also asking for the state to cover all global costs. Is that something that's also reasonable?
Yes, I mean, depending on how broadly they define that. But we've said to the teachers, we got your back. And when it comes to the masks and the protection and disinfecting and all the things we need to open that school safely, we're going to take care of that.
Governor, on the town's closing beaches, do you agree that that's, or what's your opinion on that in respect to the Greenwich Supreme Court opinion, which I know you're familiar with from your selecting days?
Yeah, so what Dan is saying is obviously we've limited the number of people who can come to our public beaches. They're getting loved to death. We've had to close them up sometimes by 10, 11 o'clock in the morning just because there's so many people there. We charge a differential if you're coming in from out of state. You have to pay a little more money. I think Rhode Island, Dan has said, stay home. You got beautiful beaches in Connecticut. And I think I say the same thing to Rhode Island, my friends there.
But do you think that that's a violation, that what these towns are doing is keeping out-of-town residents out in apparent violation? But do you have a view of that?
My personal view, which an attorney can help me out with it, but I think you're in the middle of a pandemic and it requires some extraordinary measures.
Yeah,
Susan?
Dan, I would just say about that you're referring to the constitutional case
Yes.
saying that Greenwich can't keep other state residents or people from other states off of their beach. And I think we are relying right now on our mayors and first selectmen who are our